cargo and personnel. This is in accordance with Directive 7 of the Collective Emergency Protocol. We have been classified as a loss. Taemin felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had studied the directives in engineering school. He knew the logic. The Vrin Collective controlled half the galaxy through efficiency and careful resource management. Every decision was calculated. Waste was the greatest sin. They were waste now. How long? Someone asked. Life support will fail in approximately 40 hours, Veltri said. The oxygen will simply run out. It will not be painful. That was a lie. And everyone knew it. But no one said anything. The crowd broke apart slowly. Some people went to the few windows to stare at the stars. Others found corners to sit in. Taemin walked back to the engine room because he did not know what else to do. The engine core was a twisted mess of metal and melted components. He had tried to fix it, had spent the last 3 days barely sleeping while he worked. But there was no fixing this. They needed parts they did not have. Tools that were not on the ship. And probably a miracle besides. Still, Taemin picked up his tools and started working anyway. At least working kept his hands busy, and his mind focused on something other than the slowly decreasing oxygen counter on the wall. Hours passed. Taemin's hands were covered in burns and cuts. His eyes felt dry and tired. The air was already getting harder to breathe. Thinner somehow. Or maybe that was his imagination. He was reconnecting a power relay that would do absolutely nothing to save them when the proximity alarm started blaring. Taemin dropped his tools and ran. The alarm meant a ship was nearby. Close enough to be detected. Hope flared in his chest. Painful and desperate. Maybe command had changed their minds. Maybe someone had come after all. The bridge was crowded with crew members, all staring at the scanner display. Captain Veltri stood at the center. His face confused. It is not a Vreen ship, he said. Not Kelari, either. Not any configuration in our database. Taemin pushed forward to see the screen. The ship approaching them was strange. It had hard angles and looked old. Like it had been through many battles. Scorch marks covered the hull. The design was inefficient, bulky, with too much armor and what looked like redundant systems everywhere. They are hailing us, the communications officer said, her voice shaking. Put it through, Veltris ordered. Static filled the bridge, then a voice came through. It was speaking a language Taemin did not know, but the translation program kicked in after a moment. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Hana of the United Human Space Vessel times Wildfire *. We received your distress signal. What is your status, human? Taemin searched his memory. He had heard the word before. Somewhere. A new species. Recently discovered. Primitive technology. Not part of any major alliance. This is Captain Veltris of the Vrin Transport times Eternal Current *. Veltris said slowly. Our engines have failed. We have less than 40 hours of life support remaining. However, our parent organization has classified this vessel as a loss. We do not have authorization to request aid. There was a pause. Then the human voice came back, and it sounded different. Warmer somehow. And also angry. I did not ask about authorization. I asked about your status. How many souls on board? 43 crew and passengers, Veltris said. He looked confused by the question. Understood. Wildfire times is moving to docking position. Prepare to receive rescue teams. We will get you out of there. The bridge erupted in confused murmurs. Veltris held up a hand for silence. Captain Hana, you may not understand our situation. We cannot pay for rescue services. The collective has already determined that recovery costs exceed vessel value. We have no legal claim to assistance. Another pause. This time, the human's voice was firm and clear. Captain, I do not care about your legal status or your payment capacity. You have 43 people dying on that ship. We are in a position to help. That is all that matters. Now please prepare for docking, or I will have my people cut through your hull. Your choice. Ah. Taemin stared at the speaker, his mind struggling to understand. This made no sense. Why would anyone waste resources on strangers who could not repay them? What did these humans gain? I do not understand, Veltris said, voicing what everyone was thinking. The human's response was simple, but Taemin would remember those words for the rest of his life. I know you do not, but you will. Asterisk, wildfire times out. Through the window, Taemin could see the human ship getting closer. It was scarred and ugly by Vryn standards. Built too heavy and too strong, but as it moved between them and the empty stars, as its docking lights came on bright and warm, Taemin thought it might be the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The airlock began to cycle. On the other side, humans were coming. Strangers from a species Taemin did not know, risking resources they did not need to risk, for reasons that made no logical sense. The void had been cold and empty, and ready to kill them all. Then a human ship had arrived, and everything changed. The airlock door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Taemin stood with the other crew members, waiting to see what would come through. He did not know what to expect. Humans were supposed to be primitive, their technology crude. But their ship had moved with precision and speed. The first human through the door was tall and wearing a suit that looked heavy and overbuilt. The helmet retracted, and Taemin saw a face that was both familiar and strange. 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth. But the expression was different from anything he had seen before. The human was smiling, but there was water in her eyes. She was crying while smiling. Taemin could not understand how both could happen at once. I am Jiwoo, chief engineer from the Times Wildfire Asterisk, she said. Her voice was rough. We are going to get you all out of here. Who is in charge? Captain Veltris stepped forward. I am. Jiwoo looked at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head. Well, I am not resigned to your situation. Neither is my crew. Now, I need to see your engine room immediately. The rest of my team will begin evacuation procedures. More humans came through the airlock. They moved quickly, but carefully, their faces serious. Each one carried equipment that looked bulky, but functional. Taemin noticed that everything they had seemed to be built twice as strong as it needed to be. One human, wearing a suit marked with a red cross symbol, went immediately to a Kalari child who was coughing. The human knelt down, making himself smaller, less threatening. Hey there, he said gently. My name is Dong-hyun. I am a doctor. Can I check you over? The Kalari mother pulled her child closer, suspicious. Why would you help us? What do you want in payment? Dong-hyun looked confused by the question. Payment? Ma'am, your child is sick. I am a doctor. That is all the reason I need. Now please, let me help. Taemin watched this exchange and felt his understanding of the universe shift slightly. These humans did not talk about costs or benefits. They just acted, as if helping was the most natural thing in the world. Jiwoo touched his arm. You are an engineer. Yes? I can tell by your tools. Will you show me the damage? Taemin nodded and led her to the engine room. As they walked, he noticed that Jiwoo was looking at everything, her eyes scanning the ship with professional interest. Your vessel is well designed, she said. Efficient power distribution. Minimal redundancy. Very logical. Minimal redundancy is a flaw? Taemin asked. Jiwoo made a sound that might have been a laugh. Depends on your perspective. Human ships are built with lots of redundancy. If one system fails, 3 others can take over. It is wasteful by your standards, probably. But it keeps people alive. They reached the engine room. Jiwoo stopped in the doorway and whistled. A strange sound. Okay. That is bad. But I have seen worse. It cannot be repaired, Taemin said. I have tried. We need components that we do not have. Cannot be repaired to full function, maybe, Jiwoo agreed. She was already moving forward, pulling out a scanning device. We just need enough power to maintain life support while we tow you to the nearest station. That, I think, we can do. She started working immediately, her hands moving with confidence. Taemin found himself helping without being asked, passing her tools and holding components in place while she welded and reconnected systems. Why are you doing this? Taemin asked after a while. The question had been burning in his mind since the humans arrived. Jiwoo did not stop working, but her voice became quieter. Because you needed help. Because we could give it. Is there supposed to be another reason? Yes, Taemin said. Profit. Strategic advantage. Reciprocal obligation. Any logical reason. Now Jiwoo did pause. She looked at him with those strange human eyes, and he saw something in them that made his chest feel tight. It was sadness, but also determination. Where I come from, she said. There is a very old saying. It goes like this. I am my brother's keeper. It means we are responsible for each other. All of us. Even strangers. Maybe especially strangers, because they have no one else. That is inefficient, Taemin said, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe, Jiwoo agreed. But it is right. And sometimes, being right matters more than being efficient. They worked in silence after that. Around them, the ship was coming alive with activity. Other human engineers were restoring auxiliary power. Medical teams were treating the sick and injured. Someone had even started distributing food rations, hot meals from the Times Wildfire * galley. Taemin noticed that the humans worked differently than Vrin crews. They talked to each other constantly, checking in, asking if anyone needed help. When someone made a mistake, others helped fix it without blame or punishment. They even joked, sometimes, laughing in the middle of this emergency. It was chaos compared to Vrin efficiency. But it was also something else. It was warm, alive, human. After 6 hours of work, Jiwoo stepped back from the engine core. That should do it. We have life support, stable, and enough power for basic functions. The Times Wildfire Times will tow you to the nearest Vrin station. It is about 3 weeks away. 3 weeks! Taemin felt his stomach drop. That will consume enormous amounts of your fuel and supplies. The cost will be significant. Jiwoo shrugged. Then, it costs. We have enough to make it, with some to spare. Our ship is built for long-range rescue operations. We planned for this kind of thing. On the bridge, Captain Hana was speaking with Captain Veltris. Taemin arrived in time to hear the conversation. Captain Hana, I must protest, Veltris was saying. A 3-week tow will severely impact your vessel's operational capacity. You should leave us here and continue your mission. We are already lost according to our protocols. Captain Hana's face was calm, but her voice was iron. Captain Veltris, with respect, I do not care about your protocols. I have 43 living people on my sensors, and I have the capacity to save them. That is the only calculation that matters to me. But the cost is acceptable, Hana cut him off. My crew has already voted. It was unanimous. We will deliver you safely to your people. No further discussion is necessary. Veltris looked around at his crew, then back at the human captain. Your crew voted? You run your ship by democracy? For big decisions, yes, Hana said. Everyone deserves a voice in matters that affect them. It is slower than autocracy, sometimes messier. But it is right. Enix. There was that word again. Right. The humans kept using it, as if righteousness was more important than efficiency or profit or any logical metric. The Times Wildfire Times began the tow. Massive cables connected the two ships, and the human vessel's engines flared bright blue. Slowly, carefully, they began to move. Taemin stood at a window, watching the stars shift. In 3 weeks, you will reach safety, she said. Your people will be waiting. And you will have spent 3 weeks of fuel and supplies on strangers, Taemin said. Strangers who can give you nothing in return. Jiwoo looked at him and smiled. It was a strange expression, sad and happy at the same time. You will give us something in return. You will live. You will go home to your families, continue your lives, maybe do something wonderful. That is payment enough. Taemin felt something crack inside him, some certainty that had always been there. He had been raised to believe in efficiency, in logical calculation of resources and benefits, but looking at this human engineer who had worked for hours to save people she did not know, who asked nothing in return except that they live, he wondered if everything he had been taught was wrong. I do not understand you, he said quietly. I know, Jiwoo said. But maybe, by the time we reach your station, you will start to. We have 3 weeks, after all. Plenty of time for questions. She walked away, leaving Taemin alone with his thoughts and the slowly shifting stars. Behind him, the human ship pulled them toward safety. Ahead of him, 3 weeks of trying to understand a species that defied everything he thought he knew about the universe. The void was still vast and cold. But for the first time in his life, Taemin thought it might not be empty after all. The Vrin station Helios 9 appeared on the scanners after 3 weeks of steady travel. Taemin stood on the bridge of the Time's Eternal Current asterisk, watching the massive structure grow larger. He should have been happy. He was going home, going back to his people and his life. Instead, he felt a strange reluctance. The past 3 weeks had changed something in him. He had spent hours with the human crew, asking questions, watching how they worked and lived. Every answer created more questions. Every observation challenged something he had always believed. Docking approach confirmed, the station controller said over the comm. The voice was pure Vrin efficiency, cold and professional. After weeks of hearing humans laugh and argue and express emotions constantly, it sounded hollow. Captain Hana brought the times, wildfire times, in smoothly, the tow cables disconnecting with gentle precision. At the station's main airlock, Vrin officials waited to process the survivors. Administrator Keith Rell stood at the head of the greeting party. Her face showed no emotion as she reviewed a data pad. Captain Veltrice, your report indicates you were classified as a loss. How did you survive? Number. The human vessel times wildfire times rescued us, Veltrice said. He gestured to Captain Hana, who stood nearby with several of her crew. Keith Rell's eyes moved to the humans, evaluating them with the same cold calculation used for cargo inventories. I see. What are their terms for compensation? They have asked for nothing, Veltrice said. They rescued us, towed us for 3 weeks, and request no payment. For the first time, Keith Rell showed an expression. Confusion. That makes no sense. What is their actual agenda? Captain Hana stepped forward. Administrator, we have no agenda. We saw people in distress and had the capacity to help. That is all. Altruism is not a recognized economic model, Keith Rell said. All actions require justification in resource allocation. You must want something. Hana's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed calm. What we want is for these people to be safe. They are. Our mission is complete. We will refuel and depart. The administrator stared at her for a long moment, then made a note on her pad. Very well. You will be charged standard rates for fuel and supplies. The collective does not accept charity, as it creates imbalanced obligations. Taemin saw something flash across Hana's face. Anger, maybe, or disappointment, but she just nodded. Understood. We will pay your rates. The survivors were processed through medical screening and debriefing. Taemin kept watching the humans as they prepared to leave. Jiwoo was supervising the refueling. Dong-hyun was submitting medical reports. Others were restocking supplies they had used during the rescue. They moved through the station like ghosts, there but not part of it. The Vryn crowds flowed around them with barely a glance. To the collective, humans were just another minor species, primitive and irrelevant. But Taemin could not stop thinking about what he had seen. He could not forget Jiwoo's words about being his brother's keeper. He could not shake the image of Donghyun crying while treating injured strangers. After processing, Taemin was given 3 days of recovery leave before returning to duty. He spent those days in the station's data archives, searching for information about humans. What he found fascinated him. Humanity had made first contact with the greater galaxy only 50 years ago. Their technology was indeed primitive by collective standards. Their ships were slower, their weapons less efficient, their computers bulkier. But scattered through the reports were strange incidents. A human freighter had diverted 3 weeks off course to rescue Kellari miners trapped in an asteroid. Human medical ships had entered plague zones that other species had abandoned. Human diplomats had negotiated debt relief for struggling colonies, taking losses to prevent suffering. The pattern was undeniable. Humans helped people. They helped even when it cost them. They helped even when they gained nothing. They helped because, somehow, they thought it was right. Taemin found a video file from a human news broadcast. It showed a human rescue ship arriving at a disaster site where a transport had crashed. The reporter was interviewing one of the rescuers, a young woman with dirt on her face and exhaustion in her eyes. "Why do you do this work?" the reporter asked. "You could make 3 times the salary in commercial shipping." The rescuer had looked at the camera with an expression Taemin was learning to recognize, determination mixed with something softer. "Because when people are in trouble, someone needs to help. I have the training and the ability. How could I do anything else?" Taemin replayed that clip 17 times. How could I do anything else? As if helping was not a choice, but a moral imperative. As if being able to help created an obligation to help. It was irrational. It was inefficient. It was completely contrary to everything the Vryn collective taught, and Taemin thought it might be the most profound thing he had ever heard. He requested a meeting with Captain Baum, a senior military officer who served on the Strategic Council. Baum was old by Vryn standards. His blue skin faded to gray, but his mind was still sharp, his understanding of collective doctrine absolute. "You wanted to discuss the human species," Baum said when Taemin entered his office. "This is unusual for a junior engineer." "Sir, I was rescued by humans," Taemin said. "I spent 3 weeks observing them. I believe they represent something significant." "Explain." Taemin pulled up the data he had collected. Humans operate on a principle they call humanitarian aid. They help others not for profit or strategic advantage, but because they believe it is morally correct. This behavior is consistent across their species. It appears to be a cultural value. Baum studied the information. Inefficient altruism. It will drain their resources and weaken their position. They will either adapt to galactic norms or be eliminated by more efficient competitors. "But what if it is not weakness?" Taemin asked. The question had been burning in him for days. What if this approach provides advantages we do not recognize? Such as trust, loyalty, alliance. "Sir, I have read reports of species that now trade preferentially with humans. Not because humans offer the best prices, but because humans helped them when no one else would. The humans are building relationships that transcend pure economic calculation." Baum was quiet for a moment. "You are suggesting that irrational behavior produces rational benefits." "I am suggesting that we may be wrong about what is rational," Taemin said. "The collective measures efficiency in resources conserved and profit maximized. But humans measure success differently. They count lives saved, suffering prevented, help given. And by their metrics, they are succeeding. Their metrics are irrelevant to galactic reality," Baum said. "Resources are finite. Efficiency determines survival. This is axiomatic." "Then why are humans thriving?" Taemin challenged. "Their economy grows. Their alliances expand. Their influence increases. They should be failing by our models. But they are not. Maybe our models are incomplete. Baum stood and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. When he spoke, his voice was softer. I was young when the collective first adopted pure efficiency doctrine. It solved many problems. It eliminated waste, optimized production, created unprecedented prosperity. But it also changed us. Made us colder, harder. He turned back to Taemin. I will tell you a secret, engineer. When I was very young, before the doctrine, I had a brother. He was injured in an industrial accident. The cost of treatment exceeded his economic value. By the new doctrine, he should have been allowed to die. He was waste. Taemin felt cold. What happened? He died, Baum said simply, and I told myself it was logical. But when I read your report about the humans crying while they saved you, about them spending 3 weeks of resources for strangers, I wondered. I wondered what my brother would say if he knew I let logic decide his death. I wondered if the humans would have let him die. The old officer's eyes were distant. You asked if we are wrong. I do not know. But I know this. Humans saved 43 lives that we classified as lost. They did it for no gain. And now those 43 people are home with their families, alive and well. By any measure that includes compassion, the humans made the right choice. And by our measures? Taemin asked. By our measures they were fools, Baum said. He smiled. But it was sad. Perhaps wisdom and foolishness are closer than we think. Taemin left the meeting with more questions than answers. That evening, he went to the docking bay where the Wildfire Times was preparing to depart. He found Ji-woo supervising the final system checks. Come to say goodbye? She asked. Come to say thank you, Taemin said. For saving us. For showing us something different. Ji-woo smiled. You are welcome. That is exactly what you showed us, Taemin said. That doing what feels right might matter more than doing what calculates correctly. The human engineer looked at him for a long moment. You know, when we first made contact with the galaxy, everyone told us we were too soft, too emotional, that we needed to be harder, colder, more efficient to survive. But we decided that if survival meant becoming something we hated, maybe survival was not worth it. We would rather be human and fail than be efficient and lose ourselves. What if you can be both? Taemin asked. Human and successful? Then maybe, Ji-woo said quietly. The galaxy will be a better place. The Wildfire Times departed the next day. Taemin watched it go. A small, scarred ship heading into the vast dark. But it did not seem small to him anymore. It seemed like the beginning of something new. 6 months after the rescue, the war began. The Kasith Dominion had been expanding for decades, consuming smaller civilizations and absorbing their resources. Most species avoided them. The Kasith were efficient predators. Their military doctrine based on overwhelming force and ruthless calculation. They did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They simply took what they wanted. When they moved into Vryn space, the collective responded with military precision. Fleets were mobilized. Defense stations activated. War was declared with the same cold efficiency that governed every Vryn decision. Taemin had been reassigned to the military vessel Relentless Doctrine *, serving as a systems engineer. He watched the first battles from the engineering deck, monitoring power distribution and damage control systems. The Kasith were winning. Their tactics were perfect mirrors of Vryn's strategy. When casualties exceeded acceptable thresholds, they withdrew. When resource expenditure surpassed projected gains, they repositioned. They played the same game as the Vryn, but they had more ships and more experience. The collective was losing, slowly but steadily. Territory fell. Stations were destroyed. Casualties mounted. All within acceptable parameters. Of course, the Vryn did not panic. They calculated, adjusted strategies, and continued fighting. But they were still losing. Taemin was reviewing damage reports when the news came through. Humanity had voted to intervene. The announcement made no sense. Humans had no treaty with the Vryn, no trade agreements of significance, no strategic interest in the outcome. By every logical measure, they should have stayed neutral. Instead, the human fleet was coming. Captain Baum, now commanding the Fleet Defense Coordinator position, sent out an analysis to all vessels. Human forces will arrive in 72 hours. Their technology is inferior to both Vryn and Kassath standards. Their tactical value is limited. However, political considerations require we accept their assistance, coordinate with human vessels as needed, but do not rely on them for critical operations. The tone was clear. The humans were a token force, a political gesture with no real military value. Tae-min wondered if anyone else had studied human behavior as he had. If anyone else had noticed the pattern. The human fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Tae-min watched from the observation deck as they emerged from faster-than-light travel. 20 ships, small by fleet standards. Their designs were familiar now. Heavy armor, redundant systems, built to take damage and keep fighting, built to protect people. The fleet commander was Admiral Hana. Tae-min felt something warm in his chest when he heard her name. She had been promoted after the rescue. Her actions cited as exemplary. Of course they were. She had done what humans did. She had helped. All vessels, this is Admiral Hana of the Human Defense Fleet. We stand ready to support Allied operations against Kassath forces. Transmitting tactical data now. Tae-min accessed the data stream. The humans had detailed analysis of Kassath tactics, weapon capabilities, and strategic patterns. It was impressive work, thorough and professional, but numbers did not lie. 20 human ships against the Kassath war machine would not change the outcome. The first joint battle came 3 days later. Kassath forces pushed into the Helios sector, targeting supply lines. The Vryn fleet moved to intercept with standard defensive formation. The human ships took positions on the flanks. Tae-min monitored the battle from his engineering station. At first, everything went according to doctrine. Ships exchanged fire at optimal ranges. Damage was calculated and acceptable. Forces maneuvered for tactical advantage. Then a Vryn destroyer took critical damage. Its engines failed, shields collapsed. Standard protocol was clear. Damaged vessels should withdraw. Or, if withdrawal was impossible, be abandoned. The crew would evacuate in pods. The ship would be destroyed to prevent capture. The human response was not standard. A human frigate broke formation, accelerating toward the damaged destroyer. Vryn vessel times, calculated response. Asterisk. This is UHSV times. Guardian asterisk. We are moving to cover your position. Prepare to receive assistance. Negative asterisk, Guardian asterisk, the Vryn captain replied. Vessel is beyond recovery. We are evacuating. Return to formation. Not happening, Captain. We do not leave people behind. Asterisk. Guardian times. Engaging. The human frigate positioned itself between the destroyer and the Kassath attack force. It was suicide. The Times Guardian Times was outgunned and outmatched. But it stayed, shields flaring, weapons firing, buying time for the Vryn crew to evacuate. Tae-min watched his screens in disbelief. The human ship was taking enormous damage, losing systems, bleeding atmosphere. But it did not move. It did not abandon its position. 3 Vryn cruisers broke from formation, rushing to support the Times Guardian asterisk. It was irrational, tactically unsound. They were risking multiple vessels to save one already lost ship, but they did it anyway. The Times Guardian Times survived, barely. The Vryn destroyer's crew was recovered. The Kassath forces withdrew, confused by the irrational Vryn response. That night, Tae-min heard human voices over the comm channels. They were laughing, celebrating. One of them had been injured, and others were teasing him about being reckless. Worth it, though, the injured human said. Got everyone out. Damn right it was worth it. Someone else agreed. That is what we do. In the following weeks, the pattern repeated. Human ships took insane risks to protect others. They diverted from optimal attack patterns to evacuate civilians. They used precious resources to rescue downed pilots, even when recovery missions made no tactical sense. And something strange happened. The Vryn crews started changing. Taemin saw it first on his own ship. When a human vessel called for assistance, crews responded faster than protocols required. When human wounded needed treatment, medical teams worked with intensity beyond professional duty. When human pilots needed cover, Vryn fighters provided it without waiting for orders. It was as if the human irrationality was contagious. The critical battle came at the Sanctuary Station, a massive civilian hub holding 3,000 Vryn citizens. Kaseth forces surrounded it, preparing for bombardment. Standard doctrine was clear. The station could not be defended. Evacuation was impossible in the time available. It should be abandoned to preserve military assets. The Vryn fleet prepared to withdraw. Then a single human destroyer, the UHSV times Dauntless Asterisk, moved forward. Commander Sujin's voice was calm on the open channel. All Kaseth vessels, this is Commander Sujin of the times Dauntless Asterisk. You will not fire on that station. We will not allow it. A Kaseth dreadnought, 10 times the times Dauntless Asterisk size, responded. Human vessel, you are outmatched. Withdraw or be destroyed. I guess we will be destroyed then, Sujin said. Because we are not moving. The times. Dauntless Times positioned itself between the dreadnought and the station. It was one small ship against a monster. It was futile. It was impossible. It was human. On the Times' relentless doctrine asterisk, Captain Veltrice stood frozen, staring at the tactical display. Taemin knew what he was thinking. He was calculating the logic of the situation. The Times, Dauntless Times, would die. The station would fall. Resources would be lost. But 3,000 people lived on that station. 3,000 people like the 43 who had been abandoned on the Times' eternal current asterisk. 3,000 people who had families and dreams and value that could not be measured in resource calculations. All ships, Veltrice said, his voice suddenly strong. Attack formation. We defend the station. Sir, that violates strategic protocol, the tactical officer said. I know, Veltrice said. He looked at Taemin, and for the first time since the rescue, he smiled. Engage. The Vryn fleet surged forward. Every ship, every weapon, every resource. They fought not because it was logical, but because it was right. The Times, Dauntless Times, held its position as Kaseth fire rained down on it. Shields failed. Hull breached. Systems collapsed. But it did not move. Behind it, evacuation ships launched from the station, racing to safety. Asterisk, Dauntless Asterisk, you need to withdraw, Admiral Hana transmitted. You have done enough. Sujin's response was broken by static, her ship dying around her. Not yet. Still have people to protect. We hold the line. The last thing Taemin heard from the Times, Dauntless Times, was Sujin singing. A human song. Old and sad and beautiful. Something about going home. Her voice faded as her ship broke apart, shields failing completely, but the station evacuated. 3,000 people escaped. The Kaseth withdrew. Their dreadnought too damaged to continue. The Times, Dauntless Times, was gone. 147 crew lost. That night, Taemin sat in the quiet of his quarters and cried. He cried for the humans he had never met. He cried for the certainty he had lost. He cried for all the people the Vryn had abandoned over the centuries, because helping them was not efficient. He cried because he finally understood what Ji-Woo had tried to tell him. Humans did not save others despite the cost. They saved others because anything else was unthinkable to them. Because when you had the power to help and chose not to, you lost something essential. You lost your humanity. And watching the Times, Dauntless Times, die to save people it had never met, Taemin realized something profound. Maybe humanity was not just the name of a species. Maybe it was a choice, a way of being, a commitment to value lives over logic, compassion over calculation. Maybe the humans had not come to save the Vryn from the Kaseth. Maybe they had come to save the Vryn from themselves. The war continued. But something had changed. The Vryn fought differently now. They took risks for each other. They rescued the wounded, even when it was inefficient. They defended civilians even when protocols said to withdraw. They fought like humans. And slowly, impossibly, they started to win. The war ended on a cold morning, standard galactic time, when the Kaseth Dominion signed the ceasefire agreement. They had not been defeated completely, but they had been bloodied enough to stop. The cost had been enormous on both sides. Ships destroyed, lives lost, resources spent, but the Vryn collective still existed. Their people were safe. And standing beside them were the humans, battered and scarred but still there. Taman stood in the observation deck of the Time's relentless doctrine asterisk, watching the Kaseth fleet withdraw into the dark. Around him, crew members were quiet. No one celebrated. Victory did not feel like victory when you had seen friends die. "It is over," Captain Veltri said, joining him at the window. The captain looked older now, worn by months of war. "The Council has called for a strategic review. They want to understand how we won. We won because of the humans," Taman said. "Yes," Veltris agreed. "But not in the way anyone expected. It was not their technology or their tactics. It was something else. Something we need to understand." 3 days later, Taman received a summons to appear before the Strategic Council. He had never been in the council chambers before. The room was vast and cold, designed to inspire awe and obedience. 20 council members sat in a semicircle, their faces impassive. Captain Baum was among them. He gave Tae-min a small nod of encouragement. "Engineer Tae-min," the council leader said, "you were rescued by humans. You studied their culture. You served alongside them in the war. We require your analysis. What makes humans different?" Tae-min had prepared for this question for months. He had data, charts, comparative studies. But standing before the council, all of that seemed inadequate. How do you explain something that defied every metric they valued? "They care," he said simply. "They care about people they have never met. They care more about saving lives than preserving resources. They care so deeply that they would rather die than abandon someone in need." "Emotional weakness," one council member said. "Hardly an advantage. Is it weakness when it wins wars?" Tae-min challenged. "The Kaseth beat us at our own game. They were more efficient, more ruthless, better at calculating acceptable losses. We should have lost. But we did not, because the humans taught us something the Kaseth never learned, which is that there are no acceptable losses when you are talking about people," Tae-min said. "Every life matters. Every person is worth saving. And when you fight with that belief, when your entire fleet knows that no one will be abandoned, that everyone will be brought home, you fight harder. You fight for each other. You become more than the sum of your parts." The council was silent. Tae-min continued, his voice gaining strength. "The humans call it humanitarian values. But it is more than that. It is a fundamental rejection of the idea that efficiency is the highest good. They believe that compassion, mercy, and sacrifice make you stronger, not weaker. And they proved it. They proved it every time they risked their ships to save ours. They proved it when the Time's dauntless Times died to protect our civilians. They proved it by being willing to pay any cost to do what was right." "Unsustainable," another council member said. "Such behavior will drain their resources." "Will it?" Tae-min pulled up data on his tablet. "Human economic growth since the war began has exceeded projections. Species across the galaxy are seeking trade agreements with them. Their diplomatic influence has expanded. They gain allies, not through coercion or economic pressure, but through earned trust and demonstrated values. They are thriving." Captain Baum spoke for the first time. The question before us is not whether human methods are sustainable for them. It is whether we should adopt similar approaches ourselves. Impossible, the council leader said. The collective is built on efficiency doctrine. It has governed us for centuries. We cannot simply abandon it. Then we will be abandoned instead, Taemin said. The words were bold. Perhaps too bold for someone of his rank. But he had seen too much to stay silent. Other species are watching what humans do. They see that humans help without demanding payment. They see that humans value lives over profit. And they are choosing to work with humans instead of us. You propose we change our entire civilization based on the actions of one species? I propose we remember who we used to be, Taemin said. We were not always this cold. We chose this path because it solved problems. But it created new ones. We became so efficient that we forgot why efficiency matters. It should serve life, not replace it. The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued for maintaining tradition. Others suggested limited reforms. Still others proposed a complete re-evaluation of collective values. In the end, the council made a decision. The Vrin Collective would establish the Commission for Cultural Evolution, tasked with studying human ethical frameworks and determining how they might be adapted to Vrin society. It was a small step, cautious and measured, but it was a step. Captain Baum walked with Taemin after the session ended. You spoke well. Recklessly, but well. Did I change anything? Taemin asked. You planted seeds, Baum said. Whether they grow depends on many factors. But yes, you changed something. You made the council think. That is more than most achieve in a lifetime. 2 weeks later, Taemin received an invitation. The human government was hosting a ceremony to honor those lost in the war. He was offered transportation to Earth, the human homeworld. He accepted immediately. Earth was overwhelming. Taemin had studied it in databases, but seeing it was different. The planet was chaotic, messy, inefficient. Cities sprawled without perfect planning. Wildernesses existed just to exist, serving no economic purpose. People gathered in public spaces just to talk and laugh, wasting time on socializing. It was beautiful. The ceremony was held at a place called Arlington, an old memorial ground. Thousands of humans gathered, along with representatives from dozens of species. Admiral Hana spoke, her voice carrying across the crowd. We gather to remember those who fell, not just humans, but all who fought for something greater than themselves. They fought not for territory or resources, but for the simple belief that all people deserve safety and freedom. They fought because it was right. After the ceremony, Taemin found Admiral Hana standing alone near the memorial wall. Names were carved into the stone. So many names. I never thanked you properly, Taemin said. For saving me. For saving all of us. Hana smiled, but her eyes were sad. You thanked us by learning, by questioning, by trying to make things better. That is all we ever hoped for. Why did you do it? Taemin asked. You knew what it would cost. The war. The lives lost. You could have stayed out of it. Why did you fight for us? Hana looked at the names on the wall. Because when we first went to space, we made a promise to ourselves. We promised that we would not let the void make us cold. We would carry our humanity with us, no matter how far we traveled. And humanity means caring about others, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. It cost you so much. Yes, Hana agreed. But the alternative would have cost more. It would have cost who we are. And that is not a price we are willing to pay. Taemin spent 3 more days on Earth, learning about human culture. He visited schools where children were taught not just mathematics and science, but also ethics and empathy. He saw hospitals that treated everyone regardless of ability to pay. He attended a town meeting where citizens argued passionately about the best ways to help their community. It was inefficient and messy and completely inspiring. On his last day, Ji-woo took him to a memorial for the time's dauntless asterisk. It was a simple structure, a piece of the ship's hull preserved and mounted with a plaque listing the crew. "Commander Sujin was my friend," Ji-woo said quietly. "We trained together. I tried to convince her to transfer to engineering, said it was safer. She told me someone had to stand on the dangerous edge, or the edge would keep moving inward. She saved 3,000 people," Taemin said. "She did what any of us would have done," Ji-woo replied. "That is what it means to be human. Not the species, but the choice. The choice to stand between danger and those who need protecting. The choice to pay the cost yourself, rather than let others pay it. The choice to care, even when caring hurts." Taemin returned to Vrin space carrying that understanding. The Commission for Cultural Evolution asked him to serve as a consultant. He accepted. The work was slow and frustrating. Change did not come easily to a civilization built on rigid efficiency, but change did come. Rescue protocols expanded. Resources were allocated for life preservation, even when economic return was uncertain. The concept of humanitarian aid entered Vrin vocabulary. Borrowed directly from human language, because no Vrin word existed for the idea. Not everyone accepted the changes. Many argued that Vrin were abandoning their identity, becoming weak. But others, especially those who had been saved by humans or fought alongside them, understood. They understood that strength was not just about efficiency. It was also about the courage to care, the willingness to sacrifice, the commitment to value every life, not just the economically useful ones. 5 years after the war ended, Taemin stood in a new facility. The Vrin Collective's first dedicated rescue service. Ships built not for profit or war, but purely to help those in need. It was a small fleet, just 10 vessels. But it was a beginning. Admiral Hana attended the launch ceremony, now retired but still honored. She stood beside Taemin as the first rescue ship, named Time's Dauntless Times, in honor of those who had shown the way, prepared for its maiden voyage. "Do you think it will work?" Taemin asked. "Can we really change?" "You already have," Hana said. "Not completely. Not perfectly. But you are trying. You are choosing compassion over efficiency. You are valuing lives over profit. That is all anyone can ask. We learned it from you." "No," Hana said gently. "You remembered it. It was always there, buried under doctrine and tradition. We just reminded you. And now you will remind others." The Time's Dauntless Times launched, its engines bright against the dark. Taemin watched it go and thought about everything that had changed. About being left to die in the void. About a human ship that refused to let that happen. About a war fought not for territory, but for the principle that all lives matter. About a galaxy slowly learning that the most irrational act, saving strangers who cannot repay you, might be the most important thing any civilization can do. The void was still vast and dark. But it was not empty. It was full of people helping people. Species learning from species. Civilizations evolving toward something better. The humans had broken the void wide open. And through that break, light was starting to shine. Taemin smiled, watching the rescue ship disappear into the stars, heading out to save someone who needed help. Heading out to prove that some things were more important than efficiency. Heading out to be human, in the best possible way.